Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today is Tuesday, October 31st, 2023, and we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, The Status Quo, Chapter 20, Conversation between Maitreya and Vidura, text 40 and 41. I will give you some time to pull this verse up on your devices as I chant the prayers to our spiritual teachers. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jana Jana Shalakaya Chakshulumitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Jana Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasinubhyavacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Vaishnav devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees and can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Pandit, Srivas Thakur, and all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I pray that Shri Shri Radha Kalachandji, Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Gurudev use me as an instrument so that their message can flow through me to give me the words to serve the Vaishnavas listening. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, The Status Quo, Chapter 20, Conversation between Maitreya and Vidura, texts 40, and then also 41. Please repeat. Shristva Bhuta Pishachamscha Bhagavan Atma Tandrina Digvashasho Mukta Keshan Viksha Chamilayad Drishao. Please chant. Turn on the light. Shrisha Bhuta Pisachamscha Bhagavan Atma Tandrina Vaisham Keshan Vikshacha Manimidayasho. Please repeat. Shrishva, having created, Bhuta, ghosts, Vishachan, fiends, Cha, and Bhagavan, Lord Brahma, Atma, his, Tandrina, from laziness, Dikvishashaha, naked, Mukta, disheveled, Yashan, hair, Viksha, seeing, Cha, and Amilayat, closed, Drishao, two eyes. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The glorious Brahma next evolved from his sloth, the ghosts and fiends, but he closed his eyes when he saw them stand naked with their hair scattered. Purport. Ghosts and mischievous hobgoblins are also the creation of Brahma. They are not false. All of them are meant for putting the conditioned soul into various miseries. They're understood to be the creation of Brahma under the direction of the Supreme Lord. 41. The ghosts and hobgoblins took possession of the body, thrown off in the form of yawning by Brahma, the creator of the living entities. This is also known as sleep, which causes drooling. The hobgoblins and ghosts attack those who are impure, and their attack is spoken of as insanity. Purport. The disease of insanity, or being haunted by ghosts, takes place in an unclean state of existence. Here it is clearly stated that when a person is fast asleep and saliva flows from their mouth and they remain unclean, ghosts then take advantage of their unclean state and haunt their body. In other words, those who drool while sleeping are considered unclean and are subject to be haunted by ghosts or to go insane. So I thought we would take a little break from learning about the Virat group to discuss ghosts and hobgoblins in honor of Halloween today. When we think of Halloween, what are some ideas that come to mind?
Many different things, but I think of jack-o'-lanterns and trick-or-treating and costumes and ghosts and all these kind of decorations that show ghosts and bats and kind of nighttime things.
Nighttime scary things, right? Yeah, so actually, Halloween originated from a Celtic festival called Samhain, and it's a religious celebration, actually, and it was meant to welcome the harvest, and so they would create these big bonfires because it was also fall time, and so it was starting to get colder. So they would show their appreciation and gratitude for the harvest by building these big bonfires, and then they would take this bonfire to light their hearths in their home to keep them warm all winter, as well as they would light these, they would wear costumes, scary costumes to ward off ghosts and other evil spirits that might try to haunt them during the winter or try to sabotage the harvest, things like that. And then in the 8th century, the Christian Pope or the Catholic Pope Gregory III designated November 1st as a time to honor saints. So it was called All Saints' Day, which also is All Hallows Eve, right? So the night before became All Hallows Eve, which is a different version of this All Souls Day. So All Saints' Day is also referred to All Souls Day, and that became All Hallows Eve, which then became Halloween, which also means the night before All Hallows Day. And this day incorporated, some of the traditions of the Samhain festival. It also had, celebrations to give gratitude and ask for protection from ancestors and those who've come before. So that's where we get this idea of, warding off ghosts and evil spirits, and this tradition of passing out treats as a way to appease these evil spirits, and that evolved to what we see now as trick-or-treating. And then there's also a different type of celebration called Dia de los Muertos, and it's usually a week-long celebration and starts a few days before Halloween, and it goes into November 2nd, and each day it's a different type of spirit or person that you've lost relationship-wise to you. It's a way of honoring the dead, honoring the ancestors again. So it's a celebration of life and death, and it was centered around prayer, or it is centered around prayer, and remembering friends and family members that have passed away. And it's believed that this time of the year, like the window, the veil between the living and the unliving is very thin. So it's especially an important time to ask for protection. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says in 9:25, he says, "Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. And those who worship me will live with me." So we can see that this is the case, right? So in this particular instance, we have two different, I don't know if so much in these previous festivals they were worshiping ghosts and spirits so much as asking for protection from these evil spirits. And they were more worshiping, I think, the ancestors, those who have come before. But we know, especially based on what we read last week from Srimad Bhagavatam 2:6-7, that the Supreme Lord's lotus feet serve as protection from all kinds of fear. So we take this time, or all times of the year, to ask for this kind of protection consistently from Krishna, from the Supreme, the Divine, because we know that he protects us from these evil spirits and provides us with the shelter that we need. There are some other instances where Krishna indicates this, that we are protected by him and we shouldn't fear in the Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita 18:66, Krishna says, "Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear." So he's saying here that all these other ceremonies and sacrifices and traditions, they're not as important as just surrendering to God, surrendering to the divine. And when we do that, we have nothing to fear. Krishna protects us, God protects us from all of these things. And he provides us shelter during all of these times and for these things. So there are so many instances, I think, in my own life that I know that I feel the protection and shelter of Krishna, whether it's protection from something evil or bad happening, or protection from my own, I don't know, bad choices, I guess, to just providing security in the form of financial stability or in the form of a home, things like that. One story that comes to mind in terms of protection, and I've told this before, but one time I was driving back. So I was coming home and I'd exited Munger. So if you're on 30 and you exit Munger, that intersection comes up pretty quick as you exit. And most times it's red. So I stopped at that red light, but there was a few cars behind me. So I wasn't that far from the highway, like when people exit off. And at this time, my habit was whenever I'm at a stop sign, I kind of check my messages, pull up my phone, something like that. And at this moment, I didn't do that. I was just paying attention, and I could see in the rearview mirror that there was a car coming at full speed and was trying to brake and was going to hit me. So I kind of braced myself for this impact. And in that moment, it was like this whoosh, and this car jumped up on the side, on the side there's a hill, jumped up on the hill, and it was on the top of the hill. And I could have sworn it was I saw Nrsingadev's hand push the car so that it wouldn't hit me. If somebody may say, well, that was just your imagination, but I felt it and I saw it, and I kind of heard that whoosh sound. And when you looked at it, there was no physical way that car could have, if it tried to swerve, it would have just ended up in the ditch. But to end up on top of the hill was what just happened? And in that moment, it was I knew Krishna was protecting me at every single instance. So I don't know if anyone else has had any kind of experience of feeling Krishna's protection, and if you would like to share.
Um, sometimes I feel Krishna's protection when it's like I make these kind of bad decisions or don't think something through all the way, and especially like kind of in like the management side of things. Sometimes you have to make decisions, or like I get too excited about something and I end up messing up. I've experienced this a lot of times that somehow Krishna will just like arrange it that everything's okay. The devotee didn't get too upset. Like they're like, okay, it's fine. Or like someone else in the higher up than me is like, oh, we'll work it out this way. Yeah, that's one way I feel protected.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. Does anyone else have any thoughts they want to share?
In my opinion, the very fact that Krishna has kindly allowed me to be the part of this movement, and he continues to allow me to associate with the devotees. He mercifully allows me to continue to chant Hare Krishna, and all the aspects and facets of other devotional service. That is.
Thank you for sharing. Does anyone else have any thoughts they want to share about Krishna's protection?
Um, well, I was just thinking, I am someone who really labors over making decisions. I have like a long list of pros and cons, and it takes me really a while to decide. And there have been a couple of times in my life where I've been stuck between two different choices, definitely a couple of times with jobs, and just felt so weighed down by my own, speculation of, and not sure if this would be a positive thing for me, even though maybe materially it looked very beneficial. And I have, in those instances, prayed to Krishna and asked, please just make this really, really clear. I'm no longer sure about this. And a couple of times, then that opportunity was removed from me, or I was taken out of the candidacy. And I just remember feeling so much relief that, oh, thank you, because I really couldn't see clearly if I should move forward or not, and it was taken away. So I felt his shelter, that he was saying, I got this. You're right. This is not the right thing for you.
Thank you for sharing. There's so many different ways that Krishna's protection and shelter shows up in our lives. Another example I was thinking of, especially since this time of year, it's all about like the ancestors and death, and honoring those that have passed away. I was just thinking of when my father left his body, and he had been suffering from cancer, but in that moment where he had left, you could see that there was a sense of peace about him, and he actually kind of had like a slight smile on his face when his soul left. And again, another example of Krishna's protection every step of the way, right? And it was like really beautiful in the sense that there was like kirtan playing. We had like, I think 3 different kirtans playing. They had Prabhupada's chanting on one end, and my dad loved Vyasaki's kirtan, so that was playing on another, and then there was like actually live kirtan going on as well. And so, again, Krishna provides this protection in the sense that he provided protection for my dad, but also like for showing us that he protects us from all of these different kinds of miseries and fears. As he says in Bhagavad Gita 240, in this endeavor of devotional service, there's no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So we all have different fears that sometimes brings us into anxiety. Sometimes we realize, oh, we need to just depend on Krishna, but it's really hard, like this is everyday things. And sometimes when you're going through your everyday life, Krishna can seem like a very abstract concept. And so it takes a good deal of faith and hearing these concepts and reading these concepts every day. And I know, like, I've heard different interpretations of what is this most dangerous type of fear. But really, I think for me, when I think of it, is the fear of not devoting myself to Krishna enough, right? Like, am I doing enough service? Am I doing enough to protect myself from falling into the clutches of my own desires, of my own attachments? And, some days it feels like I am, and some days I'm like totally fallen into the clutches of my material attachments and desires. So I don't know if anyone wants to share their fears, what they interpret this most dangerous type of fear to be for them.
We hear from the scriptures and also from through the classes and from these senior devotees that mad elephants often offending the devotees of the Lord who are very dear to Krishna. That's the last thing that Krishna can tolerate.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to share?
I'm trying to remember what I've heard before about that verse. Something about taking birth again, but not just taking birth again. The greatest type of fear, I believe, I was told, is to lose the human form, like to go backwards and take the animal form, and therefore not be able to know Krishna. I believe I've heard that interpretation. Yeah.
Yes, I've heard that one as well. So we can have, I guess that would be a great fear, right? To not even be able to have the consciousness of a human form of life, where we can make these decisions, where we have a little bit more willpower. We're not acting just on instinct. But then again, you could end up as a pet in a devotee's household, right? Like, I think that my pets are very fortunate because they get to hear me chanting, they get to honor prasadam. And so I know that they all have, at least the very least, a human form of life next birth for them, if not a human form of life in a devotee household. So, I think I wouldn't want to come back as a non-human, but if I were to, that would be a little bit better, I think. Anyway, but to come back at all, I think is kind of a fearful thing, especially if we see, how life has changed in our own lifetimes, and to think about where humanity and Earth and, this life will be in like 50, 60, 100 years. Who knows? And I don't know if we want to take that gamble. So it's really reassuring to read verses like what Krishna is saying is, do not fear. You don't have to worry about all these rituals and religious ceremonies. You just have to surrender. In Bhagavad Gita 1857, he says, in all activities, just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. So again, he's giving us, he's telling us to not fear. We just have to devote ourselves to him. But he also is giving us the means to which to do so. Halloween time usually, and it is again this year, falls within the month of Kartik. And we chant these prayers every evening where we're glorifying these beautiful pastimes of Krishna. And just listening to these prayers, it can give us a great image and vision in which to carry us through our days. So, if we think of Krishna's blackish lotus face, and his cheeks are encircled by locks of curling hair, and, his cheeks are reddened by the kisses of Mother Yashoda. I think that's such a beautiful, sweet image that we can remember and realize that this is the actual personal form of God that we are devoting ourselves to. And we can see how much he reciprocates, right? In one line it says that he's not bound by anyone except for his devotees' love and devotion. And that's what we're trying to achieve. Not that we want to bind Krishna, but to understand that love is that powerful that we can, if we give our unconditional, fully surrendered love to God, to Krishna, he reciprocates 110-fold. Like if we can imagine our capacity to love, God's capacity to love us is like it's infinity, right? Like we have this joke when, I love you more, I love you to infinity and beyond. Well, Krishna actually loves us to infinity and beyond. And we can't even fathom that amount of love that can, allow us to see these beautiful pastimes that he enacts. So I think this is a beautiful time of the year to really focus on our relationship to Krishna and how do we devote ourselves even more so that we feel this protection at every moment. This is 1 month of the year that we sing these prayers, but we let this 1 month carry us through the rest of the 11 months of the year, And so I know that, like, one of the things for me that I love to engage in is coming to the prayers every evening and offering the candles and hearing the prayers being sung so beautifully, differently every night by a different person, and then hearing that English translation, which hits me even more because, I understand it more. And I've even gotten to the point where when the prayers are being sung, I try to remember which verse, what is the English translation of this verse, because then it helps me to engage even more to the words that are being sung. So I know that really gives me a lot of strength. Like these are the images that flash while I'm chanting in mantra meditation, japa. When I'm doing other things, I try to keep these images in my head, right? That's what our prayer is. May these visions constantly remain in my mind. They appear in my heart, right? So what are some things that you feel help you in your endeavor to constantly remember Krishna and depend on him at all times?
Shri Guru's mercy.
Can you expand on that a little?
Guru's mercy is evoked when you follow the instructions of your Guru in a parampara, and service to Guru and his mission. That's what evokes the grace and empowerment of Gurudev. And yasa prasadat bhagavad prasad. When you have that blessing, empowerment, then you have Krishna's mercy.
Very nice. Thank you.
What helps me to remember Krishna? Well, my daughter lately, because I've been trying to teach her, and we made a plan to read together every day. Giriraj Swami's book, I'll Build You a Temple. And so in reading to her every day without fail, I'm learning all these different pastimes about Prabhupada I didn't know. I'm learning more about Giriraj Swami's heart and Prabhupada's heart and the deities in Juhu. And so as I'm moving throughout the rest of my day and week, I'm remembering these pastimes, all because I made the commitment to help her learn more.
Thank you for sharing. Does anyone else want to share?
It's kind of easy when you're just in the temple. I think I remember it's one Swami said in the Dallas temple room, it's impossible to forget Krishna because everywhere you look are these beautiful paintings and the deities are there. So just being around the temple and being around the devotees, they constantly remind you of Krishna.
Thank you. So we've heard a few different concepts. We've heard association, being in the temple, seeing the deities. We've heard reading, right? So reading about Krishna and his devotees and their pastimes, and then serving our guru. And really, when you quoted, Yasha Prasadam Bhagavat Prasado, it reminded me of the importance of the morning program, right? That's another way we can carry Krishna all year long, not just during this holy month. That if attending the morning program here in the temple obviously is ideal, or having your own morning program at home in which we recite the prayers to our spiritual teachers. It's definitely important. Prabhupada established all of these things to really help us, because it's not one thing. It's kind of like all the different things that help keep us engaged, right? So we have, prasadam that we eat throughout the day. We associate with devotees because we have to have friends. We're social creatures. We have a place to congregate. We have prayers. We have books. Srila Prabhupada really endeavored so hard to give us all of these books, the Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then his disciples are doing the same. So we can learn about our spiritual teachers, Srila Prabhupada and Krishna, by reading all of these books. We have such a vast variety of books to read. So we're not at any kind of deficit or loss of the activities we can engage in. And sometimes all we have time for is one or, two activities, depending on how busy our days are. What I do recommend is trying to find some time to read, set aside a small commitment, whether it's 5 minutes, a couple of verses, whatever small commitment that you can make, in addition to, chanting your mantra meditation, japa. We that are fully committed, we take a vow of chanting a certain amount of times. It's 16 times around the beads, which has 108 beads, which can take anywhere from like an hour and a half to 2 hours. Sometimes that can be very overwhelming if you're just thinking of what are some little ways you can add Krishna to your life as an initial go-to. So I always recommend starting with like 1 or 2 rounds, maybe 5-10 minutes each day, and then as time permits, building up. Sometimes you have more time and you can chant more, or sometimes you have less time. So try to find that minimum amount of time that you're going to chant, that minimum amount of time that you want to read. And you'll find that somehow or another it helps create more time. I know that when I'm really good about chanting my rounds first thing in the morning, even though it takes an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, I feel like that time I would have just been doing nothing. And now it's like spent productively. And then, later on when I would be like, oh my God, I still have rounds left and it's like 10 o'clock at night or late in the evening, I feel like I have that time free, to engage in other activities. And especially now this month with my schedule being the way it is, it's really important for me to get my rounds chanted in the morning first thing so that I can come and enjoy congregating with everyone in the evenings during these prayers. So, I know for me that sometimes the rest of the year, I may or may not chant first thing in the morning, but during this month, there's this extra strength that I find that allows me, maybe there's extra motivation to get it, to have that. And then like that whole feeling that's carried throughout the day of having the rounds chanted in the morning, it's beautiful. And then you end with the prayers, and it's just a beautiful way to spend the day. So I don't know if you have any tricks or tips on how you chant, get some of your rounds chanted that you want to share.
Hare Krishna.
Okay.
So I remembered Burijan Prabhu, he used to mention in his seminars on how to chant attentively. So he used to emphasize on one aspect. He used to say one mantra. No doubt mind will keep wandering. The moment you realize that, oh, what am I doing? The mind is not focused on it. So that particular Mahamantra, you chant attentively.
Thank you. Yes. One mantra at a time, right? Where we think we can multitask and chant multiple mantras at once, or we're thinking about the next mantra when we want to focus on the mantra that we're chanting. Thank you. That's a great tip. Yes.
I'm also in a similar category where I can't really speak on this because I don't do it myself. Although I've tried it a few times before, but I recall, I'm pretty sure it was Bhakti Tirtha Swami, but he had this method that whenever he would catch himself being distracted, he would go back 2 beats. And so you kind of train your mind, because just mathematically you're going to spend longer time chanting if you're distracted. So if you go back those 2 beats, your mind will be, I don't know. It helped me, but I should probably try it again more.
Thank you. That's a great tip. I know that sometimes I've heard Rasatvajra Swami say sometimes it's good to record yourself. He also has recommended timing yourself. And I used to time myself too. And I would know that if I chanted between it took me about 5 to 6 minutes per round, that I probably was paying attention a lot more. But if it took me longer, or if it took me shorter, I wasn't paying as much attention. Because it's we engage a lot of our senses when we chant our japa, when we chant in mantra meditation, right? We're trying to hear, we're speaking, we're advancing the beads. And I think sometimes what I tend to do is advance the beads too early, and then you finish early. So then I have to make sure I'm paying attention to that part. So there's just different things that I've noticed when I chant. I haven't gotten to the trick of recording myself yet. I'm kind of, I guess, fearful of what I'll hear. So I guess it's probably important for me to do so, right? Sometimes they say the things that you don't want to do is sometimes the most important things to do. So yes, thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to share? Or do you have any questions or other realizations you want to share? We're having so much trouble with the orange one. I tried the blue one, but it's doing the same thing.
These are all wonderful things. But one thing I even said to my husband recently, like in the last couple of weeks, is Giriraj Swami Maharaj, he goes live on Facebook to chant japa. And I know even when he's here, he invites people to come to his room and chant with him. And I said to my husband, I said, wow, I love how when it's so bad, but I love how when Maharaj chants, he takes his time. It takes him so much time to finish. He takes a pause between Hare Krishna and Hare Rama. And I thought, I never do that. I never just relish the chanting. I'm always like, I got to get it done. I got to get it done. So that is a realization that I had.
Thank you for sharing. Yes, that's very important. Does anyone else have anything they want to share? If not, we can go ahead and end here. All right. Tirantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Jai.